Hi everyone. Thank you for having me. Today we are going to talk about the bias, stereotypes, and prejudice. Uh, this topic not only is involving our scholar community and the different groups that we have in there, but also is a kind of thing that we could uh, care about to have a more fair society at the end. So the goal I I have for this art is not even to remove the bias or even to remove totally the implicit part of it. It's more about change the level of awareness that we have about how this works in our brains and how our cultural associations are involved here to move us to act in certain ways with different people. So so bias is just an attitude towards a certain group or the members of that group. Yeah, and these attitudes, from a psychological point of view, have three base components. A cognitive component, which is made of our beliefs about that target group or about the people that has a membership on that group. An affective part that is what we feel, the emotions that we have towards those people. It could be either empathy, dislike, fear, pityness. Uh, as you see, it could be something positive or negative. And a cognitive part, which involves our behavior and actions about the target group. So this creates a model that is called ABC, involving affect, cognition, and behavior. So the principles of this social behavior include uh, these three parts. And this is the base of this modern study on stereotyping and producing also discrimination. This talk is based on a bunch of papers from a psychology and sociological studies on the topic. As in the morning, the modern era, this kind of discrimination has evolved to a more subtle and pernicious way to showing. It is not as in the past that which was social accepted to openly speak about how you feel about people that you don't think belongs into your inner group. So the first part is the cognitive part, and this component is the set of beliefs and characterization that we have about a certain group of people. And again, these beliefs can be either positive or negative, and we hold about the characteristics of different social groups or the people that has a membership in that group. For instance, we may decide in some point that French people can be romantic, or that all people can be incompetent to do certain tasks, or even that we can armor doctors and other behaviors and system of beliefs that we have in regards different persons. So the thing is that these beliefs can guide us our actions towards those people and how we treat them. The second part is an affective component. Uh, These create the emotions that we have in combination to that beliefs, and that's also create and set our behavior towards different persons. So all these feelings can be again positive and negative. It could influence the like, awareness, discomfort, fear, admiration, kindness. And this affected states, of course, affects our reactions when we are surrounded by these people and our interactions with them. And the final part is our behaviors, is the set of actions that we have towards different social groups. And here is the more problematic part, is these actions can be based on our beliefs and attitudes, can create justified behaviors towards the members of the groups that we don't feel we are part of our group, based in just the group membership. So we are now acting towards these people based on what they are really are, but just based on what group we categorize them. So when our beliefs and our attitudes describe these negative behaviors toward different groups of people or particular members of that kind of groups, the ABC model turns into an emotionally cognitive and behavioral bias for each of their components. So this process is not just about to irrationally create unfair treatment uh, for different groups, the relationships, the interactions that we had with them, but it's essential as well for we can transform this for the negative connotation that it has to help us to create intergroup relations based on harmony and cooperation. And this can lead us to a really positive change if we know how to control these emotions that we have and our system of beliefs to, to be more fair with different people. So basically the bias is this kind of inclinations that we had in order to disadvantage people or another group. So we always create a sentiment of belonging uh, to the thing that we think is our inner group. And we see that this group as a very positive thing, but for the groups that are not belong in this inner cycle, we we create a sense of competition with them in order to maintain certain social status or a status quo or a dominant position towards the other groups. So this can create a threat or fair threat to the other groups that surrounds like the thing that we think is our inner group. So basically, this is the the principal back thing about the bias, because we treat other groups in a disadvantaged way. We have a strong favoritism for our inner group. So whether we are fully or not aware, and usually we are not aware of this behavior, we always categorize our social environment into two major categories, which are us and them. So is we start seeing another people as them or those people or wherever, where the differences can start to be exaggerated in order to maintain the status quo or this intergroup behavior. So we are more likely to treat with bias anyone that we feel is outside our own group based on these emotional and cognitive components. So this bias can be an automatic, which as an intent and automatic reaction that we have based on a certain cultural association. Can also be ambiguous. We don't treat people unfairly or with hostility, but we take distance from them. We avoid people that we don't, can you say, you are not sure what you are avoiding them. You just take your distance from them without being totally full aware of the reasons behind that, but you don't want to create a interaction with them. And and there's also an ambivalent components is when we create different categories based on the one and the competence that perceived from these people. So now think about this picture. There's a different persons here with the labels on it. So in your brain right now, there's a lot of information that with the labels, without them, you can activate different social associations in your mind. So you are thinking, do you know some things about the different labels of the different people based on how they look like? And you create judgment about if they are wrong or if they are some people that you can want to get along or they belong to you in a group, or even if they are competent or not according to the needs that you have about using others to fulfill your own goals. Like you can use it for help and cooperation, but also you can use it to maintain a status and control them to maintain a subordinating role and make you create a certain leadership to your own. This is based mostly on how do you confront your self-esteem and other things that we are going to see in more detail in a moment. But think about this. How do you feel automatically without thinking too much? The first reaction that you have, you don't understand really why you are feeling that, or you are creating this judgment about this person, about these people, and the different labels that they have. That is the implicit component, because you are not fully aware what motivates you to feel that, or how motivates you to avoid people for a certain category, or how do you act towards them. Okay, so this implicit bias is the same is a phenomenon that occurs within an individual and maybe vary on the level of awareness that we have about. So this this bias becomes implicit when it involves a lack of awareness on has an unintentional activation of how we create these cultural associations in regards people and groups. Now this is a screen from an implicit test, psychological implicit test that is meant to measure your reactions to categorize the image in the center with the categories at the left of the right. In how do you measure these immediate associations in order of milliseconds? So think for a moment how in which category do you want to uh, to get into this image in the center. It can be an image or a person, or it can be just this word. And for the next one, do it as fast as you can without thinking too much about it. Okay. So here you had a different image and how do you feel the categories were as without taking too much time to thinking. Your brain is going to choose a category. It is not really a good or a bad answer. It's only to measure your implicit associations in regards the information that you had on hand in this moment. is the same thing for this image. So whether or not do you have a different reaction with this three simple association test, um, the values thing here is how do you find the reason that this reaction that you have, uh, what is behind that, okay? It's based on your previous experience, the influence that you have, and other people, like how other people influenced you. But this is an automatic sensation. And the whole point is to learn how to control that or mitigate it, or at least know what do you have that kind of reaction. So for prejudice, this serves for the psychological point of view to enhance self-esteem, achieve material advantages, maintaining different statuses and roles in a social group. This is from the point of view within an individual, but from a point of view of a group identity, this serves to create competition and defense reactions to preserve the position of the dominant groups. This is what we said before in the past in regards race or gender relations and the typical roles that we have for people from different genders or races. So the prejudice is this is the common definition for this word. Uh, it's basically a preconceived and a friend judgment toward a person, but according to this research, is more about the emotion that we had to reflect the evaluation that we had about a person that belongs to a certain group or the group as a whole. So these emotions leads in favor to the in-group. We take us to want to avoid the people from that considering belongs to another group. An example of this is the adverse racism, which is for a different ethnic groups. Do you want to get along with them, or maybe you can feel uneasy or anxious or even embarrassed when you are surrounded by people from different ethnics. Um, this doesn't mean that you only going to be hostile towards them or try to unfairly, but this in somehow you don't want to share like the same space for some reason that you need to work on it to figure out why. So at the end, this will lead to over exaggerate the difference that we had between our group and the other groups. So in the other hand, people will see the other groups are more similar that they really are. Because if the other group looks like very homogeneous or very similar between them, we are not seeing each person individually and just making a huge judgment about the overall emotion that we have towards this group. So we are creating a false evaluation to this group and the person that belongs there, because you feel something that leads you to have this kind of behavior. So this is kind of emotions make us to act in certain ways that can impact other people's actions. That is called the Pygmalion effect or a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is basically when high status groups tend to have a very positive in group attitudes, just to justify the privilege and the favoritism that they have. And the counterpart is that groups that in disadvantage or with a lower status might be convincing to accept this unfair treatment and evaluations for the dominant groups just to justify their poor treatment. So the members of these traditional disadvantaged groups can also hold prejudice towards the dominant groups, but this prejudice is more defense mechanism in anticipation, an anticipatory reaction of being discriminated against by the majority groups or the dominant groups. So this creates this dynamic to yeah, it's more like if you treat people badly, they are going to treat you badly as a result of that. But the good thing is that this effect can be used to create a positive change, as either for a group of people or even for yourself. This pretty much the base component behind fake it till make it. Because if you really believe you can do something well, at the end you are going to do it. The same applies for the people that you influence with your actions and your set of beliefs and how you treat them. If you treat them badly, they are going to treat you badly as a result of your initial behavior. Another kind of prejudice is the ambivalent sexism. This is a combination of two different attitudes. One is a benevolent part, and the other is a very hostile part. Normally, this leads to patronizing and condescending behaviors with superficial kindness. And just in order to create a hierarchy in the relation that you had between the different groups or his members. So basically, the hostile part is when someone wants to disrupt this hierarchy and can threat your dominant position in the group or your role on it. You are going to look forward how to avoid that. Normally, it's punish these people in different ways. And the benevolent part is subtle and pernicious attitudes that you can feel like positive, but the person that is targeted of that kind of attitude will feel that it can be more patronizing or even condescending behavior. So an example of that is, especially in text communities, we have certain roles that traditionally have been for males, and that is based on a behavior to protect the dominant position on men in different roles in a company or in a community. So they combine domination and protection to produce like kind of paternalistic relationship where women as characterized as less competent, but highly valued, and also inputs men that are then obligated, like kind of protect and control women. This is the traditional behavior to protect the status quo that privileged groups create. And then it's just in order to maintain the control and the roles in different communities or social groups. So this is how this appears to just in order to protect something, okay? So for the stereotypes, and stereotypes is just the typical picture that comes to your mind when you are thinking about a social group. This is actually how your mind tries to simplify and accomplish social environment. So basically, stereotypes are a cognitive schema to process very complex information and sort this in different categories and beliefs to create sets of qualities about these other groups. In the beginning, this is not a bad thing, but we can use for create an unfair treatment in different social groups. So basically, these characterizations that comes from stereotyping provides psychological meaning to the observations of the related status of treatment that we have in our in-group for the other groups. So the stereotypes can create and constrain our expectation about these groups, and can be used to justify the disparities that we have between the different groups or people that belongs them. And this kind of rationale will lead us to just create a discrimination. So an example of these cultural stereotypes is associated with people of lower socioeconomic status. The stereotype for the dominant and privileged groups in this example is to say that these people are poor just because they have less motivation or even less intelligence than the people that have a really successful lives in terms of income, basically for the rich people. So this can also conduce to ignore that these conditions can, for the disadvantaged group, can be created based on discrimination. But for the stereotypes, you remove that part, and you don't have to like feel guilty about that, because it's not your fault or the fault of the faults that create um, these disparities, and that leads to that discrimination and less opportunities and so on. So it's basically the policy on the person or the disadvantaged group. So for the stereotyping, we consider two dimensions. One is the warmth and the competence of the target group or person that we have we hold the stereotypes against. So the thing with this is that stereotyping can influence our performance in academic or in in our jobs, the careers that we choose to follow, even the technologies that we want to work with. As you may see in different technology communities, people move to another thing just because they don't feel really well how about the treatment in that communities. This also affects our experience at work and social events like a conference, for instance, and even the amount that we are paid for the work that we do. So according to the levels of warmth and competence that we can perceive for a different groups of people, we can categorize them, and this will lead us to create different attitudes between them. For instance, the stereotypical White House will be seen as a high one person, but lower in competence. This is not to suggest that actual housewives are not competent. It's more about that we are not admire them about their competence in the same way we admire, for instance, a doctor or a college professor. The other combination of these two dimensions is leads us to attribute laziness or incompetence or even evil to disadvantaged or lower status groups. This helps the dominant groups to explain why these disadvantaged groups are in these circumstances. It serves as a justification on how to continue this victimization how to preserve these stereotypes based on how the motivation behind that is only to preserve your status in your dominant group. So this also implies that for the advantage groups, they have the need for control. So they put all this responsibility about these disparities on the super group. One example of that is that homeless people or even drug addicts can be stereotyped as not having good intentions and likewise being incompetent to do anything useful for the society. So these groups represent make people feel more discussed than the other categories that we had here in terms of these two dimensions. And these stereotypes are preserved for cognitive and social reasons. In the cognitive part, our brains is used to discount the behaviors that are discrepant with our beliefs. If we believe something, we are going to defend that and ignore the facts about. It's just because the way our brain works, but we can control that. We can teach ourselves to how to mitigate that reaction. And from the social uh, point of view, people behave in ways that can reinforce these stereotypes. This has related with the Pygmalion effect in order to preserve these stereotypings. So let's consider this phrase. So at the beginning, you might not be, this seems like something positive. You are saying good things about people or a certain group. But behind this and how you came to accommodate the adjectives and even showing what, when you are talking about this man, you are talking about the membership that he had to a social group, and then you figure different adjectives to justify a lot of things, that the information that you had in your mind and maybe you are not fully aware of. But also this is going to tend to miss the things that shape the way that you assemble these different adjectives. See, this is basically the factors that shape that an immigrant can be hardworking, can be implying that he were like being forced to work long hours in order to succeed and overcome unfair circumstances. But by trying to show this as a positive thing, you are maybe ignoring the fact that create uh, this kind of characterization of this social group. So this leads us to this conclusion that our biases pretensions influence often without full awareness how people behave to fulfill, say, the expectations. So stereotypes represent different sets of qualities that we preserve to reflect the essence of a group. So so these stereotypes can be transmitted to socialization, the media, language, discourse. In regards, like, for instance, for the virus, you might be hearing different politicians talking about a Chinese virus or something like that. Uh, as you know, our virus doesn't have a nationality. So that is real the motivation that is behind how they assemble these that kind of adjectives to show something more. So this leads us to basically two different reactions from people towards the stereotypes. So the first one is tokenizing. This is when a person is like the only member of the group that is also called solos. When people things like token, they are going to experiment a really vulnerable state and self-consciousness. This is going to reduce the ability to perform effectively, and this is leads to justify how they may uh, needs more support or more help, but you are ignoring the fact that treating people like that, it puts a cognitive burden on them. So they are not performing as much as they can, but it's because all this uh, state of mind that you create in regards to this treatment. The other part is the stereotype threat. This occurs when a person becomes aware of negative stereotypes about them. So this produces an anxiety and a cognitive preoccupation. So the performance is going to be decrement because this uh, cognitive burden that we can create on these people. So in this research, I found that when women are reminded of their own true stereotype, that women are poor doing math, they perform more poorly on the math text than when they are not and reminded of this negative stereotype. So one might be think that these biases are created in our childhood, but the truth is that the moral judgment and the inclusive orientations like cooperation uh, emerge way too prior to the stereotyping that group biases. This is when children construct the knowledge about their interactions with the world. This knowledge is not only based on the parental attitudes, and these children start to create a judgment about others and from the expectations and the social interaction that they had with them, rather than from a direct transmission from the parents. So this create the possibility to say children of the different groups interact before to create these behaviors. They don't going to hold bias against other groups of children based on socioeconomic status, race, gender, etc. But this is only based in had a meaningful interactions with people of different social groups. So the good news is that bias can be controlled. We can control this through basically two things, the information and motivation. So the cognitive tendencies towards stereotyping makes it seems like something inevitable, but this can be overcome. We can overcome our mental habits in order to mitigate our behaviors. So based on our bias beliefs and emotions. But this information needs to be a high quality information. And it cannot have any level of ambiguity because this information is ambiguous, can be assimilated to the stereotype. As I said before, we can move towards defend our beliefs. So this information has to prove us wrong on that stereotype without to create any doubt about that. For the motivation part, there is a little more tricky because we can use this motivation to either preserve the stereotype or for removing them. So the stereotype is about a strong is strong, and we have very bad information about and our inner motivations in order to avoid this stereotyping are not strong enough. The stereotyping is going to be preserved in the time. Uh, for that, there are different motivational factors that can help us to in our pursuit of the avoidance of different stereotyping. The first one is belonging. This is the base that people are motivated to get along with others, uh, regardless the group membership, especially if we can create a sense of cooperation and create valued outcomes out of that cooperation. Another part is understanding. Uh, this is basically when we have a need to understand other people to create meaningful relationships. We can avoid bias towards them. We need to remove our controlling need about people and how to control and to produce better outcomes to us. We because we hold a need of control, we are more prone to create stereotypes. Enhancing is about being insecure or anxious when we are surrounded with different people that belongs to different groups. We are increasing our uh, stereotyped beliefs about them. Trusting is one to many white people. We expect the worst for people that are from other groups, and we are motivated to see the best in our inner groups. So if we can create a constructive intergroup interaction, this can be overcome about this sense of cooperation. And despite our best intentions, it means when we have deliberate attempts to suppress the bias, we can create an algorithmic rebounding so we can preserve our inner motivations are not strong enough to get rid of our bias interactions. So you really have to find a strong intrinsic motivation to remove your stereotype beliefs. So it's not can be only based on this is maybe the right thing to do, which it is, but if you don't feel like really committed with that, it's not going to work. Or you are like uh, looking for a very status, the people uh, characterize you as a good person or something like that is a little poor intrinsic motivator to remove the bias for your mind. So in conclusion, in order to reduce the bias, we need to create a cooperative interdependency between groups. This leads to create more equal and respectful relationships and to remove the subordination and domination for different groups. So the key here is to have shared goals and maintain equal statuses and support uh, the people for the other groups. The other thing is foster diversity. And when a group appears to share some essential homogeneous characteristic, it's more reasonable to our mind to make more confident generalizations about the fundamental character of these group members. So this implies that the more diverse a group is, the more elicit less generalization that end building bias towards that group. Um, but reducing bias requires changing attitudes through education and interaction, and this is only going to work one person at a time. Because if you can't remove that from just one person, this is going to spread to another person and so on. But tackling this idea for a group perspective, according to the research, normally doesn't work. It's pretty much think about the different religions. They started convince one people at a time, and there are millions of people with the same uh, set of beliefs based on that. So that was my thought. This is the reference of the study. Much of these papers are online for free. Thank you very much. I don't know if there's any questions on something. Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Jefferson. That was great.